Thank you, Neil. And so basically what I'm going to go over is a plan we started working on in late December last year in 2014. We wanted to push forward. Um, so it's going to be a very brief PowerPoint. I want to try and go over more detail talking about it. And then there's contact information at the end. If you have any questions, you can just reach out to the people working on the exercise. So, um, so part of the vision that came behind it was to really create an expansive component for the exercise, to identify shortfalls and gaps with our current capabilities, and then just to provide a lot of volunteer opportunities, as well as make sure that volunteers have a chance. We have several that take the shelter training but don't feel like they're able to call out and work at a shelter. So we want to make them feel a little bit more comfortable and be able to ask questions separate from a real life situation. So those are all the general concepts behind having a exercise plan. But some of the thing that we did that was sort of more unique with this is that we decided to have a exercise per month, and they would all be sort of a single activity per that month. For example, for January we had casework, and then for February we had sheltering, and then as each month builds up, come July we're hoping to have a comprehensive connected exercise that engages multiple activities. So that way, when the caseworkers are participating and committing their working with clients and the participants that are pretending to be clients, the casework can't really be done without the damage assessment. So they have to rely on other activities to be able to complete their casework. So to really connect with the concept that your activity does not function completely without another activity. So this was what the schedule was looking like originally, and we've had to make changes. And one of the things that we've had to do is change around different national exercises or statewide exercises as well. So we're constantly making changes and updating it and changing our schedule. So we already did the recovery exercise, and it started off with the concepts behind doing the first casework on scene, as well as what components go into uploading a case into CAS, committing to the follow-up calls, 48-hour calls, and then closing a case. And so the sheltering exercise we took the shelter fundamentals exercise, we adapted it a little bit, but it's basically the same as the shelter fundamentals exercise. And some of these other information you'll see on here that talks about our feeding exercise is going to be pretty small. It's more about decision-making capabilities. How many people, what are the trigger points, and trying to do the planning, uploading loading up a computer, figuring out what are the best restaurants, what's the best feeding plan, and then planning for meals for the next following days. It's not actually going out and providing meals or how to serve food. It's about how to plan for it. The DA exercise we're actually using from a statewide damage assessment. So with our region being one of the pilot programs, we've had to make some adaptations as well as work around a national schedule. So we're still looking at how we're going to do that to best fit based off of possible new damage assessment guidance. The expanding incident was one that really, we have a lot of multifamily fires that start off with around 4 units showing up, and that turns into 34 units, and how to sort of go from a DAT response to a DR or possible DR. And now we were planning to expect the National Mass Care exercise to be similar to last year's, our statewide exercise, but we found out that it's slightly different. So even as the days progress, our schedule constantly changes to try and match what's going to occur in our region. But they all sort of lead up to the test, is what we're calling it. The idea is that every exercise is sort of a quiz, and then the test is the ultimate understanding of what it's like to be in action on a local DR, and what we can manage within our territory, within our region. A key component of that is that it includes each one of the exercise that builds up is included within the test. So it goes over planning for feeding at multiple locations. We start off with an exercise with it being a small incident that gets bigger. We open up one of our partner shelters. We have caseworkers show up, and then we're going to have damage assessment being done at a neighborhood in our territory. And then those are all going to connect, because damage assessment needs to pass that to casework. Feeding needs to know how many people are out at doing DA, as well as are in the shelter, as well as are at the command center. So they all connect, and the idea really shows that how it feels. And as well as another thing is all the exercise leading up are more training exercises. We stop to teach people. They're round robins for some of them, and we go over paperwork. But for the actual test exercise, it's going to be more of an action-based, real functional exercise where they get pulled in and say, okay, I need you to start working on this. So a lot of the resources that we pulled for the initial resources were we had a multifamily fire exercise, which was real basic and pretty old, but we were able to adapt it to turn it into the casework exercise. We used the shelter fundamentals exercise. We used information from the old statewide mass care exercise, and we're using a lot of the national damage assessment exercise information. So we're taking a lot of old documentation, updating it, or making it, just adapting it to make it appropriate for our territory. Now, some of the basic things I talk about here, and I'll go into more detail. Documentation is key. We are looking to have strong volunteer leadership and have good documentation. So we're having people do planning documentation. We're trying to match FEMA as far as how our documentation. So we have an adapted FEMA document that goes into the planning, the actual execution, and doing an after action review, which we're doing for every single one of these exercises. The tests, so I want to go into more detail on what would really be the test, but it's really the culmination of all prior exercises, and it's supposed to give not just the lowest level of service associate, but show a supervisor what could happen, what are the in-checks that they need to be answering, as well as they need to know how to pass information up to an incident command scene. They need to know how to do a 5266, or what questions are going to be asked for that, reporting numbers and all of that, as well as how to just manage their own site, because we'll be running multiple sites at the same time. So the test is really based off of my personal past experience in working with the military, and I actually got to be present on one of the Marine Corps' largest exercises, and they stood up multiple scenes, and they had all of their little exercises participating at multiple locations, but in one event in one day. And so we're planning for that sort of event to happen. And the idea is that how do we make an all-encompassing exercise that impacts all of our activities that we need to work most on. Now, major challenges that we had was developing new exercises or adapting old exercises, funding resources, trying to find money to pay for feeding, that sort of thing. So those are challenges that we ran into and had to work around. Because we made feeding part of an exercise or part of all the exercises, we include that as part of our direct supplies. As well as just making sure we have enough, cots, enough paperwork, and things like that. Changing our schedule. We've had to change our schedule about 3 or 4 times, so we'll probably have to change it again. And then adapting for national policy. National policy has changed a few times since we've started this, and it's probably going to change a few more times. And so specifically our damage assessment is changing, and we'll look at what we're going to be talking about and what are the key components. Casework, we did that before our pilot program came out. And so we took that information and tried to adapt it, because we plan on doing this all again with the new pilot program if it sticks. So these are some of the names of the people that have been working on most of the exercises. So this is myself, Philip Grantham. Lonnie Mon is the disaster program specialist for over the territory. John Wilson has been our lead planner, and as well as documenting all of this. And so we'll try and make all the documents that we have so far available for those interested. Lily Thomas has been our recovery lead, and so she helped manage the casework exercise, and Terry Lawrenson has been in charge of sheltering for us. So she's a key component for the shelter exercise. And then all of those people are going to be involved with the next upcoming exercise, or the July exercise. And so we have several other names identified for the feeding, the expanding incident. But the main idea is that we have this long buildup. It provides an engagement opportunity for volunteers, as well as really we found some major gaps in our capabilities because of it. So we're learning a lot from it. But the idea is that most of the activities that I've seen, or most of the exercises in the Red Cross, are one activity based. And so we wanted to have something that really shows the connection between activities and how necessary that is. But that's the main core concept. And if you just have any questions in the future, don't hesitate to contact any one of these people, and they'll be happy to talk about the project. So depending on which group you're talking about, so we've talked to the leadership working on it. They're pretty excited about it. They jumped on board. They wanted a way to teach their volunteers separate from just having online training. And so one of the key components, I'm actually glad that you asked that, is that there's sort of learning and then there's achieving. And for the online classes that are mostly available, you really can learn something, but you don't get to achieve anything. You don't accomplish anything by taking an online class. And for people that go out in the field, they're actually accomplishing something, and they're providing some information to clients, or they're doing that, but they don't often learn the best practice. So these exercises are giving an opportunity for them to learn the best practice and actually accomplish something by opening up a shelter, creating cases, providing and developing feeding plans that come out of this. And so they're actually able to accomplish and learn at the same time. And our volunteers have really jumped on board with it. Some of them we wanted a little bit more presence. We wanted a few more volunteers to get on board, but keep in mind that if anyone's trying to do this in their territory, to not necessarily pick the same exercises, pick what you need to develop most in your territory, and then it's not about having the most volunteers or having the most large exercise. It's about having the most efficient exercise and teaching the most. So it's okay to get, unless not get 20, 50 volunteers, it's okay to get 15 volunteers and go over in more detail and have them ask more questions and get a better experience out of it. So our last exercise was a few weekends ago, and they really enjoyed it and had a good time. So. Yeah, no, thank you, Neil. And yeah, I would love to go over it in more detail with anyone who has questions in the future.